Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, 12th chapter. And this is verse 12. Some days it becomes more blatantly obvious how someone like me trying to approach the Supreme Lord is it's totally ridiculous. It's just totally ridiculous. But what can I do? What alternatives do I have? I don't have any choice. But still I can feel embarrassed. But somehow by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, the doors swung wide open, and the line of disciplic succession coming from Sri Gauranga has opened it up for the most fallen, so here I am. Door was open and I just sort of like wandered in. So the remedy is to hear and chant and to take shelter of the devotees, specifically the advanced devotees, and most specifically the pure devotees. So the Bhagavatam is translated with commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is topmost Paramahamsa, pure devotee of the Lord, expert, completely expert in carrying out the devotional service of the Lord and the preaching effort. And so we'll be hearing from Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastai Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskitadi Saturni Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is the enlightenment of Maharaj Rahugana by transcendental personality Jad Bharat, great elevated Vaishnav. And this is the translation for text 12. Jad Bharat speaking. My dear King Rahugana, unless one has the opportunity to smear his entire body with the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees, one cannot realize the absolute truth. One cannot realize the absolute truth simply by observing celibacy, brahmachari, strictly following the rules and regulations of householder life, leaving home as a vanaprast, or accepting sannyas, or undergoing severe penances in winter by keeping oneself submerged in water, or surrounding oneself in summer by fire in the scorching heat of the sun. There are many other processes to understand the absolute truth, but the absolute truth is only revealed to one who has attained the mercy of a great devotee. So there it is. It's by the mercy of the devotee that one gets Krishna, and it's by the mercy of Krishna that one gets the association of the devotee. So at first Maharaj Rahugana didn't recognize the level of realization of Jad Bharat, and he insulted him and spoke abusive words, was sarcastic. He was offensive. He offended him. But Jad Bharat didn't accept the offense. But then Maharaj Rahugana realized his mistake when Jad Bharat started to speak. He realized that he really put himself in a bad situation for his own spiritual development. So he surrendered. He fell at Jad Bharat's feet and he begged forgiveness. And then he inquired, can you help me in my spiritual path? I want to make advancement. Can you help me? Please help me. I accept you as my teacher. So Jad Bharat began to instruct him on the basics of spiritual life, not this body. There's lifetime after lifetime. One gets a material body according to the desires, their desires which are stored in the subtle body, which is the mind, carries the living entity from one birth to another birth, to get a gross body in which to act out the desires. And how the laws of karma work, like this. The basics of being able to distinguish spirit from matter. And Maharaj Rahugana frankly admitted, I hear what you're saying, but I don't have any realization. Can you please speak in such a way that I can realize what you're saying? And then Jad Bharat chastised him. He helped him by becoming, entering into a more personal relationship with him. It's very personal to chastise someone. So it's a kind of love. If you care about someone and you see that something's not right with them, that you might chastise them to snap them out of it. So that his love, he showed some love toward Maharaj Rahugana like that by chastising him, that he cared about him personally. He called him a fool, and who did he think he was? He thinks he's the king, but he's not a king. Everything is just a transformation of the material energy, specifically the earth. Everything comes from dust, goes back to dust. It's an illusion. You're a fool. Wake up. So now in this verse, he's explaining the significance of the pure devotee, and that there really isn't any way to understand the truth except by the mercy of a devotee, which he has just revealed to Maharaj Rahugana. Because he is that pure devotee, and he is giving that mercy to Maharaj Rahugana. So, unless one has the opportunity to smear his entire body with the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees, one cannot realize the absolute truth. Why is that? Because the pure devotees are the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, who is the absolute truth. He resides there, manifest as the Supreme Person. Now, He's manifest in everyone's heart, of all living entities, as Paramatma. But that's a partial manifestation. Within the heart of the devotee, because there's actual devotion to the Lord, there's a loving service relationship going on between the devotee and the Lord is manifest as the Supreme Person within the heart of the devotee. And that is how one makes their connection with the Lord, so that they can realize the absolute truth. Bhagavan. Prabhupada's commentary: actual knowledge of transcendental bliss can be bestowed upon anyone by a pure devotee. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhaktao. But one cannot attain the perfection of spiritual life simply by following directions of the Vedas. Just see, actual knowledge of transcendental bliss can be bestowed upon anyone by a pure devotee. So anyone means literate, not literate, studied the Vedas, doesn't study the Vedas, deaf, dumb, blind, whatever. The pure devotee can bestow transcendental bliss in realization of love of Godhead on anyone. That is the person Bhagavat. That person is Krishna's representative, and Krishna is there in the heart of that person, personally, directly. Whereas one cannot attain perfection of spiritual life simply by following the directions of the Vedas. Cannot attain spiritual life, the perfection of spiritual life, just by following directions of Vedas. One has to approach a pure devotee. Anyabalasita sunyam jnana karmadyanavritam. By the grace of such a devotee, one can understand the absolute truth, Krishna, one's relationship with him. A materialistic person sometimes thinks that simply by executing pious activities, remaining at home, one can understand the absolute truth. That's denied in this verse. Nor can one understand the absolute truth simply by observing rules and regulations of brahmachari or celibacy. One only has to serve a pure devotee. That will help one understand the absolute truth without fail. So that service to the pure devotee can be in many different forms. One of the forms of service to the pure devotee is hearing. So that's why hearing from Srila Prabhupada through his books is devotional service to a pure devotee. So one only has to serve the pure devotee, or one only has to hear, give submissive oral reception to the pure devotee. And that will help one understand the absolute truth without fail. Text 13. This is Jad Bharat continuing. Who are the pure devotees mentioned here? In assembly of pure devotees, there is no question of discussing material subjects like politics and sociology. In an assembly of pure devotees, there is discussion only of the qualities, forms, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is praised and worshipped with full attention. In the association of pure devotees, by constantly hearing such topics respectfully, even a person who wants to merge into the existence of the absolute truth abandons this idea and gradually become attached to the service of Vāsadeva. So there's no question of discussing material subjects like politics or sociology. Only the qualities, forms, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by constantly hearing such topics respectfully, even a person who wants to merge into the existence of the absolute truth abandons this idea and gradually becomes attached to the service of Vāsadeva. So if we want to know who the pure devotees are, that's who they are. And how do you recognize them? Well, you can recognize them by how they're behaving, what they're saying, and what they're doing. They're not discussing anything other than Krishna. And we saw that with His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He didn't discuss anything other than Krishna, Krishna consciousness, how to serve Krishna, how to understand Krishna. And when there was some overview or relating to the present time and circumstances, maybe the social environment or the political environment, it was always in relationship to Krishna. Never separate from Krishna. Always for serving Krishna. Glorifying Krishna, understanding Krishna, realizing Krishna. For Krishna's pleasure. Prabhupada's commentary. The symptoms of pure devotees are described in this verse. The pure devotee is never interested in material topics. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has strictly prohibited his devotees to talk about worldly matters. Gramya varta na kahibe. One should not indulge in talking unnecessarily about news of the material world. One should not waste time in this way. This is a very important feature in the life of a devotee. A devotee has no other ambition than to serve Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Krishna consciousness movement was started to engage people 24 hours daily in the service of the Lord and in His glorification. The students in this institution engage in the cultivation of Krishna consciousness from 5 in the morning to 10 at night. They actually have no opportunity to waste their time unnecessarily by discussing politics, sociology, and current events. These will go their own way. The devotee is concerned only with serving Krishna positively and seriously. This is some of the benefits of service in the temple, especially if someone is a student going through their student phase. 24 hours a day is Krishna. This is how Prabhupada set the temple life up. Actually, it starts at 3 in the morning. The way he set it up, started at 2:30 or 3 in the morning with chanting and worshiping the deity, serving the deity, cleaning the temple, and different preaching activities, serving in the kitchen for making the offerings for the Lord, taking care of Tulsi Devi. It's 24 hours a day, and going out into the street with literature, or to universities for giving classes, or out to visit the devotee families outside and make programs there for teaching the chanting and glorifying Krishna. It's just 24 hours a day. Prabhupada set up the temple life. So there was no discussion of the worldly news, which comes and goes. It comes and goes. And not interested in that, only interested in serving Krishna. So it's very, very nice if anyone can take advantage of temple life to become fully engaged 24 hours like that. At least during their student life, to get a good foundation for the rest of their life, when they may take up other duties, like family and job and so on. But at least during student time, to get that relief. It's from the material, discussing material things, thinking about material things. It's total relief from that. That's the way Srila Prabhupada set the ashram life up in the temple. Hare Krishna, everything around the deity and chanting. Text 14. In a previous birth, I was known as Maharaj Bharata. I attained perfection by becoming completely detached from material activities through direct experience and through indirect experience. I received understanding from the Vedas. I was fully engaged in the service of the Lord, but Due to my misfortune, I became very affectionate to a small deer, so much so that I neglected my spiritual duties. Due to my deep affection for the deer, in my next life, I had to accept the body of a deer. So he's talking about these things. He's frankly explaining. He has full knowledge of what happened, and he's sharing this. This is another symptom of love. Is revealing the mind in confidence and inquiring confidentially. So Maharaj Rahugan has revealed his mind. He said, I don't understand. I'm very unfortunate like that. I'm materially attached, and I don't understand. So quite openly and honestly, in submission, he's humbly presented the condition of his mind, his thoughts, his confidentially, this is my situation. Maharaj and Jad Bharat is now confidentially saying something about his journey, his spiritual progress, what happened to him. And he's sharing this. So this is exchange of love. Prabhupada's commentary, the incident herein described is very significant. In a previous verse it is stated, Vina Mahat Padara Jo Shekam. One cannot attain perfection without smearing the dust of the lotus feet of an exalted devotee on his head. If one always follows the orders of the spiritual master, there's no question of falling down. As soon as a foolish disciple tries to overtake his spiritual master, becomes ambitious to occupy his post, he immediately falls down. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati katopi. If the spiritual master is considered an ordinary man, the disciple loses his chance to advance further. Despite a very rigid life in devotional service, Bharat Maharaj did not consult a spiritual master when he became overly attached to a deer. Consequently, he became strongly attached to the deer, and forgetting his spiritual routine, he fell down. So, yeah, there was no buffer there for Maharaj Bharata. He was out in the forest, and he completely disregarded this very important aspect of devotional life, that one always must take shelter of the advanced devotees in all their endeavors, and should never act independently. And unfortunately, he disregarded that, and without any guidance at all, he disregarded the orders of his spiritual master, which evidently had been to perform these regulative activities and this worship in a solitary place like that. That must have been the instructions given to him by his spiritual guide. He had taken shelter in an ashram, but he disregarded that, and he acted independently. And he began to disregard the instructions of his spiritual master. And therefore he was very easily victimized by material attachment. There's an interesting sentence here. Prabhupada says, as soon as a foolish disciple tries to overtake his spiritual master, becomes ambitious to occupy his post, he immediately falls down. So never surpass the spiritual master, and you never ignore the spiritual master. And if the spiritual master is considered an ordinary man, the disciple loses his chance to advance further. So how important is that relationship between the advanced devotee, the spiritual master, and the disciple? Everything depends on it. Everything in spiritual life depends on it, because that person is connection to Krishna. Krishna is working through that person for the benefit of the disciple. And to disregard that person or go against their instructions, or to see them as an ordinary person. It's just as if we're seeing Krishna in that way, seeing Krishna as an ordinary person, or disregarding, if Krishna gave you direct instructions and disregarding them, or to try and be better than Krishna. This is all suicidal on the spiritual path. It's like spiritual suicide. Text 15. My dear heroic king, due to my past sincere service to the Lord, I could remember everything of my past life, even while in the body of a deer. Because I am aware of the fall down in my past life, I always keep myself separate from the association of ordinary men. Being afraid of their bad materialistic association, I wander alone, unnoticed by others. Wow. He's telling this to Maharaj Rahugana. Who has he told this to before? We haven't heard him speak like this to anyone. So Maharaj Rahugana is very special here. Commentary. In Bhagavad Gita it says, Svapamapyasya dharmasya, it's certainly a great fall to go from human life to animal life, but in the case of Bharat Maharaj or any devotee, devotional service to the Lord never goes in vain. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavan Jayante Kalevaram. At the time of death, by nature's law, the mind is absorbed in a certain type of thinking. This may lead one to animal life, yet for a devotee there is no loss. Even though Bharata Maharaj received the body of a deer, he didn't forget his position. Consequently, in the body of a deer, he was very careful to remember the cause of his fall down. As a result, he was given a chance to be born in a family of very pure Brahmins. Thus his service to the Lord never went in vain. And that's very reassuring. It doesn't go in vain. Even if there's some problem at the final hour, if someone has practiced and practiced, there may be a little bit of a distraction for a while, but it's never lost and it's resumed. It's taken up again at the very next opportunity, as we can see in the case of Jad Bharat. Text 16. Simply by associating with exalted devotees, anyone can attain perfection of knowledge, and with the sword of knowledge can cut to pieces the illusory associations within this material world. Through the association of devotees, one can engage in the service of the Lord by hearing and chanting, Shravanam Kirtanam. Thus, one can revive his dormant Krishna consciousness, and sticking to the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, return home back to Godhead, even in this life. So that is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is an opportunity for Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam Vandam Dasyam, Sakyamatma Nivedanam. First and foremost, as Jad Bharat is pointing out here, is Shravanam Kirtanam. And this is Lord Chaitanya's special focus also, is the chanting, hearing and chanting. So that's what it means, associate with exalted devotees, is in Bhagavad Gita also, just approach a bona fide spiritual master, inquire from him submissively and render service. So inquiring means hear from him, and that's rendering service, is the hearing and chanting, and then utility is the means. So facilities, serving by supplying facilities, that's there also to facilitate the hearing and chanting, is also devotional service, to maintain the temples, to clean the temples, to make programs so people can be outsiders can be facilitated to make some contact with Krishna and hear Shravanam Kirtanam also. So this is at the heart of the association with exalted devotees, is the hearing and the chanting. And by such devotees, anyone can attain perfection of knowledge. And the perfection of knowledge is the realizations that cut to pieces the illusory association with the material world. And one can revive their dormant Krishna consciousness. Return back home, back to the spiritual sky, even in this life. And this is Jed Bharat speaking. This is ancient history, and it is no different then than it is today, because it's the absolute truth. A pure devotee always says the same thing. They all say the same thing. They all say exactly the same thing, because it's the truth. They don't change it. Maybe according to time, place, and circumstance, some little things so that the audience, adapted a little bit so the audience can understand. Like with Maharaj Rahugana, he gave the absolute truth, but Maharaj didn't. He said, I'm not realizing what you're saying. I hear and I agree, but it wasn't until Jed Bharat adapted it specifically for him. He's talking to a king who's puffed up and proud, but not everyone's a king. So someone else may need to hear another way, according to time, place, and circumstance. But the essential truth is never the same. It's always the same. Prabhupada's commentary: to become liberated from material bondage, one must give up the association of worldly people and accept the association of devotees. Positive and negative processes are mentioned in this regard. Through the association of devotees, one develops Krishna consciousness, which is dormant within. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving this chance to everyone. We're giving shelter to everyone who is serious about progressing in Krishna consciousness. We arrange for their lodging and board so that they can peacefully cultivate Krishna consciousness and return home back to Godhead, even in this life. Yes, that's the case. These temples are, Prabhupada's temples are institutions where people can come and they will be supplied their lodging and board, and they'll be able to attend the classes, engage in devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Yes, that's Prabhupada's arrangement. Very nice. About the way things may be a little differently presented, just the minor details actually. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati requested his disciples to chant 64 rounds a day. Prabhupada's disciples, he requested them to chant 16 rounds. He had to adjust that because life in the West is so very different from the life in in India, in the holy places in India. It's very different. So life in the West is just, everyone is so distracted, and just to maintain themselves, they work so many hours per day. So 16 rounds was more, was prescribed. So there's a difference there. But there isn't. The principle is the same. Follow the instructions of the spiritual master. And because he has the kind of vision that is, it's like, I heard this nice example of like a maze. If you're in the maze, you can't see which is the right way to go, which is the right path, and which one's the dead end, and which one leads to getting out. But if someone's above the maze, and they can see, they're up above the maze, and they can direct and go this way, take a left, no, go back, take a right, turn around. They can guide because they're above the maze, they're not in the maze. So the spiritual master is like that. So he may prescribe sometimes for those that are in the maze to chant 64 rounds, and that is for their ultimate benefit. And another spiritual master who is also above the maze, he may see that for the benefit of those caught in the maze, 16 rounds is more appropriate. So the adjustments may be something like that. So that ends the purports of the 5th Canto, 12th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation Between Maharaj Rahugana and Jad Bharat. So chapter 13, and the summary is here for chapter 13. The Brahmin Jad Bharat became very kind to King Rahugana, and to dissociate him from the material world, he spoke figuratively of the forest of the material world. He explained that this material world is like a great forest in which one becomes entangled due to association with material life. In this forest there are plunderers, the 6 senses, as well as carnivorous animals like jackals, wolves, and lions, wife, children, other relatives, who are always anxious to suck the blood from the head of the family. The forest plunderers and the carnivorous blood-sucking animals combine to exploit the energy of a man within this material world. In this forest there's also a black hole covered by grass into which one may fall. Coming into the forest and being captivated by so many material attractions, one identifies himself with this material world, society, friendship, love, family. Having lost the path and not knowing where to go, being harassed by animals and birds, one is also victimized by many desires. Thus one works very hard within the forest and wanders here and there. He becomes captivated by temporary happiness and becomes aggrieved by so-called distress. Actually, one simply suffers in the forest from so-called happiness and distress. Sometimes he's attacked by a snake, deep sleep, and due to the snake bite he loses consciousness, becomes puzzled and bewildered about discharging his duties. Sometimes he's attracted by women other than his wife, and thus he thinks he enjoys extramarital love with another woman. He's attacked by various diseases, by lamentation, by summer and winter. Thus, one within the forest of the material world suffers the pains of material existence. Expecting to become happy, the living entity changes his position from one place to another, but actually, a materialistic person within the material world is never happy. Being constantly engaged in materialistic activities, he is always disturbed. He forgets that one day he has to die. Although he suffers severely, being illusioned by the material energy, he still hankers after material happiness. In this way, he completely forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By hearing this from Jad Bharat, Maharaj Rahugana revived his Krishna consciousness and thus benefited from Jad Bharat's association. He could understand that his illusion was over, and he begged pardon from Jad Bharat for his misbehavior. All this was told to Maharaj Parikshit by Sukadeva Goswami. Text 1. Jad Bharat, who had fully realized Brahman, continued, My dear King Rahugana, the living entity wanders on the path of the material world, which is very difficult for him to traverse, and he accepts repeated birth and death. Being captivated by the material world, under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun, the living entity can see only the 3 fruits of activities under the spell of material nature. These fruits are auspicious, inauspicious, and mixed. He thus becomes attached to religion, economic development, sense gratification, and the monistic theory of liberation, merging with the Supreme. He works very hard day and night, exactly like a merchant who enters a forest to acquire some articles to sell later for profit. However, he cannot really achieve happiness within this material world. Prabhupada's commentary. One can very easily understand how difficult and insurmountable the path of sense gratification is. Not knowing what the path of sense gratification is, one becomes implicated in the repetition of birth and accepts different types of bodies again and again. Thus one suffers in material existence. In this life one may think that he is very happy being an American, Indian, Englishman, or German, but in the next life one has to accept another body among 8,400,000 species. The next body has to be immediately accepted according to karma. One will be forced to accept a certain type of body, and protesting will not help. That is the stringent law of nature. Due to the living entity's ignorance of his eternal blissful nature, he becomes attracted to material activities under the spell of Maya. In this world, he can never experience happiness, yet he works very hard to do so. This is called Maya. So very active. The living entity cannot remain inactive even for a moment. And those who are on the path of material sense gratification are very active. Specifically, the mode of passion is very active to acquire things. Acquisition. And sex life, very active mode of passion. So we see that most of the Western society, Western world is very much in the mode of passion and ignorance. It's the more, have to get more and more and more things, more possessions, more, bigger, better, more. It's the mode of passion. So he works very hard day and night, exactly like a merchant who enters a forest to acquire some articles to sell later for profit. He's taking all the different resources of the planet and manufacturing, when really living very simply is ideal. Agricultural, simple agriculture, growing one's own food, staying in harmony with the seasons, keeping things very simple like that is peaceful life. And that's mode of goodness. So, see, this is mode of passion. You can never attain real happiness in mode of passion. Can't attain real happiness in any of the modes, although mode of goodness has more happiness to it, but it's material happiness, so it also has its frustrations. Real happiness is on the spiritual platform, with nothing at all to do with material energy. Only to do what's needed, but not identifying with it as the self. People are identifying their conditioned souls are identifying happiness with their achievements in the material world. They're identifying that that's where my happiness is, in my material achievements. So that's the mistake, that there is no happiness there in material achievements. You have a beginning and an end, so there's always frustration. Prabhupada's commentary. One can very easily understand how... Oh, we read that. Okay, yeah. He'll be forced to accept a certain type of body. Protesting will not help. It's very popular now to protest. Make the government hear. You're going to make a protest. Well, in this case, protesting will not help, because the laws of material nature are very stringent, and they'll be forced to accept a certain type of body. Protesting will not help. Text 2. O King Rahugana, in this forest of material existence, there are 6 very powerful plunderers. When the conditioned soul enters the forest to acquire some material gain, the 6 plunderers misguide him. Thus, the conditioned merchant does not know how to spend his money, and is taken away by these plunderers. Like tigers, jackals, and other ferocious animals in a forest, they are ready to take away a lamb from the custody of its protector. The wife and children enter the heart of the merchant and plunder him in so many ways. Now, talking about these are material identification, identifying with the material wife, the material children, material. Merchant is material. His endeavors are all material, and he thinks his happiness is connected to material situations. That's what's being discussed here. But devotees, those that develop family life, and their house is one of the varnas and ashrams, grihastha ashram, where Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is worshipped, the instructions of the spiritual master are followed, hearing and chanting about the Supreme Lord takes place. That's a different situation. They're not plunderers. They're not plunderers. They're there to make advancement in spiritual life. That's a whole other situation. He's talking about something else here. He's talking about the forest of material existence. Just like the senses of a devotee are not plunderers either. The senses of the devotee are engaged, are spiritualized in service to the Lord. But not so materially. Materially, senses unrestricted, engaged in material sense gratification, drag the living entity all over the creation. There's 8,400,000 species with 8,400,000 different types of senses in which to engage in the material energy. The living entity is dragged through the species, birth after birth, life after life. Prabhupada's commentary, in the forest are many plunderers, dacoits, jackals, and tigers. Jackals are compared to one's wife and children. In the dead of night, jackals cry very loudly. Similarly, one's wife and children in this material world also cry like jackals. The children say, "Father, this is wanted. Give me this. I'm your dear son." And the wife says, "I'm your dear wife. Please give me this. This is now needed." In this way, one is plundered by the thieves in the forest. Not knowing the aim of human life, one is constantly being misguided. The aim of life is Vishnu. Nate vidhu svatam gatim hi Vishnum. Everyone works very hard to earn money, but no one knows that his real self-interest is in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of spending money for advancing the Krishna consciousness movement, one spends his hard-earned money on clubs, brothels, liquor, slaughterhouses, and so forth. Due to sinful activities, one becomes implicated in the process of transmigration, and thus has to accept one body after another. Being thus absorbed in a distressed condition, one never attains happiness. It's a gruesome picture. Instead of using the money to advance Krishna consciousness, conditioned materialist spends his money on so-called happiness of clubs, brothels, liquor, slaughterhouses, and so forth, and becomes implicated in the process of transmigration. Everything should be used to serve Krishna. Text 3. In this forest there are dense bowers composed of thickets of bushes, grass, and creepers. In these bowers, the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in the forest, and sometimes he's bewildered by seeing a fleeting fiend or ghost, which appears like a meteor in the sky. These descriptions are a far cry from when we hear the descriptions of the Lord's abode, with the cool, clear lakes and the beautiful trees and the cuckoos and the different birds singing in different tunes and the lush foliage and the beautiful flowers and the fragrance in the air, so sweet. A little different. This forest is not very nice. It's a dangerous place. Mosquitoes everywhere. Envious people like mosquitoes. Sometimes there's ghosts. Ugh. Prabhupada's commentary: the material household is actually a whole, a fruit of activity. To earn a livelihood, one engages in different industries and trades, and sometimes one performs great austerities, sacrifices, to go to a higher planetary systems. Apart from this, at least everyone is engaged in earning a livelihood in some profession or occupation. In these dealings, one has to meet many undesirable people, and their behavior is compared to the biting of mosquitoes. This creates very undesirable conditions. Even in the midst of these disturbances, one imagines he's going to construct a grand house and live there permanently, although he knows he cannot. Gold is compared to a quickly fleeting fiend, which appears like a meteor in the sky. It displays itself for a moment and then gone. Generally, karmis are attracted to gold or money, but these are compared herein to ghosts and witches. This is the appeal of the material. Try to get these things, material enjoyment. So, apart from this, at least everyone is engaged in earning a livelihood in some profession or occupation. In these dealings, one has to meet many undesirable people. Their behaviors compared to the biting of mosquitoes. Isn't that the case? Isn't that the case? Very uncomfortable situation. Undesirable conditions. But even in the middle of this, conditioned soul is still thinking, I'm going to make a grand house, I'm going to live there permanently. But he knows he can't live there permanently. But still, he's endeavoring to do that. And here, gold is compared to a fiend, a quickly fleeting fiend, like a meteor in the sky. It appears for a moment and then it's gone. So it's like money. It's like a ghost or a witch. Very different from Lakshmi. Lakshmi is a goddess of fortune. She's engaged in serving Krishna. But here, when in the material situation, it's not Lakshmi directly, it's shadow reflection of Lakshmi. And it looks like a ghost, very fleeting. One minute you have money and the next minute you don't. One minute the gold's there and the next minute it's gone. Very fleeting. Text 4. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of the material world, his intelligence victimized by home, wealth, relatives, and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind, that is to say, in his lust he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded, and he cannot see where to go or what he is doing. So Prabhupada's commentary is going to help us with this. It is said that household attraction resides in the wife because sex is the center of household life. Yan maitunadi griyamedi sukham hi tucham. A materialistic person making his wife the center of attraction works very hard day and night. His only enjoyment in material life is sexual intercourse. Therefore, karmis are attracted to women as friends or wives. Indeed, they cannot work without sex. Under the circumstances, the wife is compared to a whirlwind, especially during a menstrual period. Those who strictly follow the rules and regulations of householder life engage in sex only once a month at the end of the menstrual period. As one looks forward to this opportunity, his eyes are overwhelmed by the beauty of his wife. Thus it is said that the whirlwind covers the eyes with dust. Such a lusty person does not know that all his material activities are being observed by different demigods, especially the sun god, and are being recorded for the karma of one's next body. So this about the once a month menstrual period, that's for people who are actually trying to follow some rules and regulations. In the present day, no one's following any rules or regulations. There's all kinds of artificial arrangements, contraptions, medications to prevent pregnancy. So sexual intercourse is, I know some people, not devotees, 2 or 3 times a day they'll engage in sexual intercourse. Like pigeons, like the birds. Birds are very active with sex. Pigeon, so 5 times a day they'll have intercourse. So it's like a whirlwind, the dust of this. It's a lust, the dust of it covers the vision. And it's especially unfortunate for the man because in other places it's discussed that the amount of energy it takes to produce the semen for the man drains him from developing his mental abilities. So he actually becomes less and less intelligent the more he engages in this unnecessary sexual activity. So it's very unfortunate. Like the camel, they say the camel is, they think thorns are delicious because they're nice and juicy. Thorns aren't juicy. What it is the camel's eating these thorns and it's cutting his tongue and his mouth and he's drinking his own blood. It's basically what's happening. So that's one of the ways to understand what's going on in this all this unnecessary sexual activity. Such a lusty person does not know that all his material are being observed by demigods, especially the sun god, and are being recorded for the karma of one's next body. Astrological calculations are called Jyoti Shastra, because the Jyoti, or effulgence, in the material world comes from the different stars and planets. The science is called Jyoti Shastra, the science of the luminaries. By the calculations of Jyoti, our future is indicated. In other words, all the luminaries, stars, sun, and moon, witness the activities of the conditioned soul. Thus he is awarded a particular type of body. A lusty person whose eyes are covered by the dust of the whirlwind or material existence does not at all consider that his activities are being observed by different stars and planets and are being recorded. Not knowing this, the conditioned soul commits all kinds of sinful activities for the satisfaction of his lusty desires. So, it's not that sex is forbidden. Sex is there. It's just has to be done nicely in Krishna consciousness for responsibly producing nice children and good family life, healthy society, like that. But this lust is like a raging fire. It's never satisfied. And by engaging in these activities, it's like pouring gasoline on it. It doesn't put it out. By succumbing to these, especially like sex, a sex drive, by succumbing to it, it doesn't put the fire out. It's like pouring fuel on it. It's like pouring gasoline on it, and it just flares up even worse. So the best thing is to curb this lust. And the lust is coming in the mind. And when the mind has the knowledge that it needs and is fixed on transcendence and Krishna, then little bit, this fire of lust can be extinguished. And by the association of the pure devotee, one can give up all attraction to material engagement completely. No matter how fallen the person is, a pure devotee can deliver anyone. Can do that. Especially considering the most recent incarnation of the Lord, Lord Chaitanya, Patitapavana, who has come to deliver the most fallen. And in this age, oh boy, all the people are just engaging unrestrictedly. Such an unfortunate age. Passionate, working so hard to acquire things, and this lust everywhere, intoxication, this in the Western world especially, but now everywhere it's spreading. This is the effects of the Kali Yuga. So, Lord Chaitanya, most merciful. Chant Hare Krishna, and I will accept that as devotional service. And you will get the mercy of my divine energy simply by chanting. I will accept that chanting as devotion. And if I accept that as devotion, then I'm accepting you as my devotee, and your path back home, back to Godhead is underway. So, Hare Krishna.